What the Heck's your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 new deck combinations that we're trying out for the very first time. I'm your co-host, Davey, and with me, it's a whole new world for these guys. I've got Brian. How are you, Brian?
Sup, doing well.
Phil?
Hey, I'm doing good.
And the man who's been making decks nonstop, Skylar. How are you?
Feeling rhyme locked and nice and thawing.
Rhyme locked and ready to rhyme rock.
Exactly.
For context, it is the 23rd of April. You boys just have about a week and a half before you're in Alberta, and hopefully having a whole lot of fun up there.
The weather's warming up, so I decided, let's go back north.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are coming to you today to cover our experiences with some of the new stuff. There, what did it add up to? We've got 7 new warbands and 3 new rivals decks. So think of it as like 10 new items. Yeah. And we did hot takes on a lot of these. We covered them in brief as they arrived, but what we wanted to do is get a chance to come back around once we had a little more playtime with it. And speaking for myself, and I think for everybody, we've been trying a whole bunch of different things, whether it be at League, whether it be online, all number of things. And it's been a smorgasbord. It's like this thing where, you go to the buffet and just keep taking more and more helpings of different things and just can't get enough. It's been really cool to try all kinds of different things. Every time I'm getting ready to play a game, there's like 3 or 4 different things I want to try to do.
Yeah. The drinking from the fire hose continues.
Yeah.
I feel like a dog chasing cars right now.
Which is problematic because you guys are headed up, and what's exciting is that who knows exactly what's going to be strong or hot or anything like that. Who knows? And what one part of the country thinks, or part of the continent, I guess in this case, thinks is strong, and brings some other folks might not. And so it's going to be a tough meta to plan for. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So we are going to go over just kind of a grab bag of our thoughts on each. But when we set this recording, what we didn't know was that an FAQ and errata was going to drop. So we're going to take just a few minutes to hit the highlights on that. We're not going to go blow by blow, but we just wanted to get the highest points. Let's see. We'll have one of our FLM players there, Brian. Can you tell us about that? I think in summary, I think Force of Frost took some hits. FLM took some hits. There was some rule change, and then Daggok took a little bit of a buff. So we're just going to kind of cover those 4. Brian, you want to hit us with the FLM stuff?
Yeah, well, when 3 FLMs make it into the top 5 at Adepticon, I think that makes sense. So FLM's got 2 of their hybrid objective cards hybrids got turned into duels.
Got it.
Yes, specifically that was Glorious Change. So now what you're looking to do, instead of an or statement, we have an and statement. 2 or more surviving friendly changers each have 1 or more upgrades, and 2 or more enemy fighters each have 2 or more wound counters and or are out of action. Alongside Arcane Mastery. Actually, that's a surge. Hold on. That also saw a change. Rampant spell casting. So this now reads, score this in the end phase if your warband cast 3 or more spells in the preceding action phase, and you have no power cards in your hand and 3 or more gambits in your power discard pile.
Yes, thank you. I was struggling to recall the names specifically, but it's a big change. They've got a lot of tweaks on them, but one of the things, at least I was hearing consistently, and I know this was a frustration for Davey, is no matter what it seems like you try and do, you can't really deny them a whole lot. And I think these 2 cards in particular were some of their easiest. Glory for 2 in the end phase kind of seemed like with both of those conditions are so good that they would just be, in most other warbands, a card unto themselves for each condition. Mm-hmm. And they had the option of or on each of them. So now it's a both. You got to do both.
And in my quick opinion, I would just say I think they're both still very takeable. I think you probably, unless you're in a pairing that's really red hot, that can fill your objective cards up, I think these are still quite doable.
As the Eflin player, I totally agree. One of the things is most decks in Nemesis always have to take some sort of a suboptimal choice, whether it be usually in the objectives and oftentimes also power and upgrades, or gambits and upgrades. And I think Eflin has been skating by not having to make too hard of decisions in the objective phase or in the objectives deck. So I think this is fair.
Sure.
Yeah, I would agree. They felt like auto score vehicles for 2 glory apiece, prior. I actually think that this is a fairly light change. Like, yes, it's they're no longer auto score, but the reason I think it's a fairly light change is most other warbands out there, I feel, would love to have either of these cards in their deck, even as changed now.
Yeah. Let's see. The other, and this is a common pairing, was Eflin and Force of Frost. We saw Force of Frost take some hits, notably Chill of the Grave, which went from 2 glory for needing 2 enemies out of action to 2 glory for needing 3 enemies out of action. And then Freeze Thaw Finish, which ended up with a much more limited targeting thing. It used to be able to do that ping to like anybody who's standing next to a feature token, I think, which was really just a shocking amount of the board. So I really like the change to Freeze Thaw Finish. I'm a little puzzled on the Chill of the Grave. It feels like I might have been interesting to see that one change in some other way, like 2 fighters out of action and each of those enemy fighters have an upgrade or something like that. Because the jump from 2 to 3 makes it dead against most elite. But it may still be in play if we're seeing a lot of hordes, which that might be the case. So I think there's still a lot of strength. And I think the one I left off here, an important one, is the cloak, right? The Iceworm cloak.
Iceworm cloak now only reduces damage if you're not adjacent, which I think is a pretty big deal. It'll be interesting. I mean, I don't know.
Basically, if you do all the work to get to the target and you're adjacent, then you're going to get full damage in, basically. So that sounds like, Eflin can't castle up in the backfield.
Yeah.
Yep. So I mean, I think we seem to learn over and over and over again that damage reduction cards are really, really good.
Yeah.
And so we'll often see them restricted or errated or modified in some way after they've been printed. So,
I think a good example of like GW learning lessons about this is that the newest ones that we've seen. So like in Rhyme Locked, there's a damage reduction upgrade, but it only applies if you're holding an objective in enemy territory. Still good, but like way more restricted.
Yeah. And maybe still takeable. Skylar, you are our main rules guy here usually. So what was the most significant rules things that you wanted to touch on?
Well, out of the ones you just ran down, I liked Freeze Thaw Finishes change the most. Like, I think the range before was just bananas. So I really like that it's much more plannable to avoid right now, right? Like, just stay away from block taxes, and you kind of know already that that's something that you want to stay away from when it comes to playing against this particular deck, Force of Frost. But to bring it more in line with Ira's Frozen. Wait, is it Ira's Frozen Bonds?
Ira's Frozen Bonds.
That is the one.
Is also really cool, right? So now you don't have to kind of like memorize how 2 different spells work. They both work about the same now. There's a slight difference, but mostly the same now. So I like that quite a bit.
Sure. What about rules erratas, like overall rules erratas? What are most significant things that listeners should be aware of there?
I want to say this one because at LVO I kept getting stuffed by Grizel's Arena blocking if you're just trying to make a little laser shot spell attack for 1 damage and then they make a dodge to deny you that, it's an unsuccessful attack. Now it's saying that a attack action can successfully fail. So if the opponent has a damage reduction capability, whether it be Arena's Dodge, Worm Spats, Shield, or stuff like Tough Hide in upgrades, then the attack can still be successful and land, but cause no damage.
Right. Basically, there was a legacy sort of FAQ that was saying that an attack that causes no damage is unsuccessful. And that's something that we've been running with for quite a while. Now that we have a much more defined attack sequence that says that has a determined success step, just follow the instructions on that to determine if your attack was successful.
Yeah. I think it's a good change for the rules writing. I think it opens up a few opportunities for different things where previously you would have had to write cards in a very specific way where it's like, oh, this triggers when you get hit by a successful attack, but you have to survive because it said just a successful attack. Well, now that actually triggers at a different spot in the reaction window. So, I think this is actually going to be one where we need to go back and look through a bunch of cards as well to see, like, how does this actually affect how a lot of older cards were written, because they probably weren't written with this intent in mind. So there might be some timing changes here.
I think up until recently, most things said reduce damage to a minimum of 1, but there are a handful of things where that's important. Most notably, Grisel.
I think there's a few cards that say, like, when this fighter is, successfully hit with an attack or something to that effect.
Got it. Then
do this thing. Yep. It's like a power card reaction. And now that window is technically before you take damage, which is like, it might be a small thing, but it might have a major impact in certain scenarios. So I think it's just an interesting one.
All right. Phil is our resident Stab Lad Stan. What kind of buff did these guys get?
Yeah, so they decided that Stab Lads are bad. No, I'm just kidding. But they decided that they did need a buff. And so what they decided to do is there's a small change to Herc, who is the Hornblower. It used to read that he could only use the reaction to get a roar counter after an activation that did not include a super action. So he couldn't charge and then get a roar counter, which meant that if you wanted to set up his supports, you couldn't be attacking with him usually, unless your opponent actually like put him in a position to get to attack for free, which, like, why would somebody do that?
Blowing the horn should be a lot easier. Don't you think Carthane agrees, Skyler?
Carthane probably. Yeah. Yeah. And so now he can do that regardless of whether it's a super action or not. So
yeah, and one kind of stealth thing in there is that might be one more Daggok spear poke. Since Herc could now charge, you react with the spear. Herc makes his whack and then toots his horn. Before, if you're going to move with Herc, it was going to block out the same window between Daggok and Herc.
Busted. Please nerf.
Oh man. So
get ready for
good. Yeah. And I think that this was kind of necessary. Like, they needed something probably because their damage is relatively low and their end phases aren't very good. So it was like, well, all they've got going for them is that they're a 4x4 warband. They have 4 elites with 4 wounds. Which is solid, but like when 2 of your fighters are like, well, I won't say completely inaccurate, but like one of them is very inaccurate. One is like just average. And then
when they don't
is on 1
hit
damage.
Very hard, it feels fine to make them more accurate, and giving them the support from the horn feels appropriate.
Yeah.
I always got the impression that their attack profiles were like, they appear balanced based on the horn being in play.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's probably true, especially the spear from Daggok with the reaction where it's like 1 fury that can't be modified. That seems really weird. Why is that? Well, probably
Scared
if it
of
always
Rippers.
has support, like, or it may be double support because realistically he's going to be in the horn bubble and somebody else just charged. So it's like, oh, so it's double supported. So it's actually more accurate than a single smash, which, yeah. So,
well, all right. I'm going to send it one more time around here for things to the errata or FAQ. I guess we should note that there is some maintenance stuff going on there that are rotating the season, like updating exactly what boards, just the stuff we typically expect. That anything with Nether Maze is now rotated out of play and all that sort of thing. But outside of that, anything else somebody wants to hit from those before we launch into our main topic here?
I think it's just a little disappointing that, there's a couple changes to a couple FAQs on Wintermaw stuff, but not a whole lot on any of the Rivals of the Mirrored City deck. Do you guys think that there's a ton of stuff that needs clarification in the Mirrored City pack?
No, if something pops up, we may mention it if we find something confusing or maybe a little not operating as intended. I don't think there's anything particularly egregious in Mirrored City, but more to be determined as we play.
I actually think not seeing much here from that release is like something to celebrate, right? Like seeing things from Wintermaw already make it in here means that they weren't able to get it onto the cards in one way or another. Like I believe that like not only would they prefer to avoid errata, but even in this turn, the sense of like FAQs, like if they can make the card clear enough on its own to avoid an FAQ, that's the route they want to go. Because if you think about it, like not only do they have to print these cards that now are causing questions, but then they also have to go and print answers and do that in however many languages these FAQs are distributed in.
Sure.
So I imagine like any time they can say, hey, day one we didn't feel we had emergency questions we needed answered or erratas that we needed out. That's probably actually a pretty good feeling.
Yeah.
I do think there were a few, like, I don't know how impactful they were, but there were a handful of things for Brethren. So I guess that's maybe the only
I was going to mention it.
It didn't quite make it through cleanly, but I think they seemed relatively minor, like just wording clarification things. So
yeah, they've got a couple of questions and then one errata. And the errata I'm going to bring up here because it makes me giggle. It's to the card called Holy Spasms. And the change here is that it's not a reaction. It's a must. Like it's going to happen. You have to do it. So this is use this after this fighter is inspired or uninspired. Push this fighter 1 hex. And it just amuses me so much that by removing like the player agency and reaction there, it feels much more apt name wise.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That was one of those that I read and I was like, without looking at the card to see what it was, I'm a little unclear on what changed. And so I'm actually glad you laid that out. So, well, all right, let's march through these. We got 10 of these and we're going to hopefully try to do about 5 minutes ish on each so that we're not here until I have to go to work tomorrow morning. But we'll do our best. Like with anything, we're going to, as we focus on some of these things, this isn't the last time we'll ever talk about any of these. This is us just kind of touching on everything as it comes through. And I've put them roughly in the order in which we received them release wise. Obviously, a lot of stuff just kind of dropped at the same time. So take that for what it's worth. But I'm going to kick it off with Zandara's Gravebreakers, one of the things we had slightly more time with. And I've played a handful of games with these, almost exclusively with Fearsome Fortress. I think there's some cool combinations there. My experience with them is that they're super fun. A real crucial card is that Salvaged Intelligence, which just unlocks some really crazy activation efficiency. That's where, as long as Zandara hasn't charged, you can react to take an action with Verlaine. So there's some cool things like barging with Zandara and then attacking with Verlaine. He's no longer a beast, so you can give him a ranged weapon, or if you're using Hungering Parasite, he might have increased range, so you can have this kind of dueling gunfighter thing sometimes where both Zandara and Ferlane are at range 2 or 3 and are slinging shots around like back-to-back action movie style.
Takes two to tango.
Yeah. What I have encountered is some of those cards that I was pretty warm on, like I think Ever Seeking, basically the ones that are surges for grave breaking twice or in enemy territory. The order that you draw those in can really change how good they are. They're amazing early and they're pretty rough late, because when you're in round 3 or round 2 especially, I think is where I find it most painful. A lot of times, like, man, I can't afford to just walk a zombie around to dig something up, and I don't really need the the upgrade anymore. Sometimes you're feeling the pressure, like I got to get some attacks out. So that's what I was finding there. But I've had some extremely fun games, and they continue to feel like really thematic, like on brand, and just a shocking amount of healing if you can line it up right. And that's been pretty cool. Anybody else got some experience with the Gravebreakers here?
None playing as them.
Okay.
I've got a little bit as them. So did a What the Decks episode last week where we built them from the ground up and explored the pairing with Beastbound Assault. And so nicknamed that deck Soulbound Dreamers. I've actually only got to play it once so far, and only that was my first game piloting them. I'd played against them twice before that, and piloting, I can't echo enough that like the salvage intelligence upgrade is so key. It feels like your first action is go find that if you didn't draw it in your opening hand.
Yeah.
And as I was playing, I found that your knowledge of what you could unearth in the upgrade category was crucial. Like, there was a point where I was in a jam. I was up against Exiled Dead. I had Markov and Regulus positioned on both sides of Ferlane, ready to double activate against him. And I was like, I'm going to go down if this goes off. What do I do on my turn? And Ferlane had charged already. And then I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I'm going to Grave Break and unearth with one of these zombies in the back. I'm just going to go see what I have. And sure enough, I was able to find Undying Love. And like, just knowing that was in the deck, a tool that I could go find in that moment, where I'm able to instantly heal for lane 1, Zandara 1, as well as push one of the fighters up to 3 just by applying this upgrade. I was able to get Ferlane out, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And I think the only other thing I want to like super highlight with Soulbound Dreamers here is it was a local chop who like turned me on to try exploring this pairing on What the Decks, and it was all over a card called Countless Familiars, because this card can count as 2 upgrades for the price of 1 on either, for Lane or Zandara, and then inspire the other. And you can even go as far as to give the additional token to the other fighter and get them halfway to inspiring the other pair, the other lover, which is just so cool.
Yeah, that feels like the slickest trick with that pairing, and I think the mileage on that deck pairing depends on how well you can navigate some of the more challenging aspects in the rest. But I will say, like, as we get down later, there might be some interesting play, because you get to launch an attack where you can break an upgrade. That has potential to become more valid now that there's one particular upgrade that can get kind of slapped around sometimes.
Yeah, it was also the first time I've ever run Friendly Swarm to lean into what you were saying about healing. This is just heal 1 each friendly fighter that is Beast, Companion, Minion, or has a Denizen upgrade. Well, by the time you play this, that's probably everybody.
Yeah.
So I was really like staggered by how much healing you could just pull out at any given time in this warband.
Cool.
Yeah. I've only watched other people play the deck, but it does look like it's a fairly counterpunch build. More so than I guess I would have imagined, but it makes sense, right? Because you're going to be digging with zombies early, and then hopefully Voltroning up the two and then doing work. So I think that makes sense. I have yet to see the Daring Delvers pairing happen, and I'm very interested in how well it will work. I don't know that it, like, after building it on paper, I was like, oh, maybe this isn't as good as I had hoped it would be, but I do think it's still very interesting, and I could see them getting very high exploration counts very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, the deck that came out at about the same time was Rhymelock Relics, and this is one of a few examples where I think the members of the podcast kind of came down on some pretty different spots for this one. Mostly looking at you, Phil, but
Yeah.
So Skylar, since it's featured on a What the Decks, maybe you want to chat it up a little bit?
Absolutely. I am. What did you say? Rhyme rocked. Rhyme locked and ready to rhyme rock.
Yeah.
There we go. So I like this deck so much. I've actually bought a second copy of this deck.
Wild.
It's only the second deck in the history of the game, or Nemesis, that I've done this with. I have a second
Listeners
copy.
guess the other one.
I have a second copy of Fearsome Fortress that is forever
No, you don't
paired.
say.
Spoilers.
Is forever paired with Headcracker, so that I don't have to break that pairing down to explore the pairing with others. And so that's always ready and in my pack, and I love every game of Headcrackers Fortcrackers I get to play. And now I'm feeling the same way with Skace Wild Hunt and Rhymelock Relics. I think it almost feels like a toolkit designed specifically for them. Like, it's reinvigorated such a life into that warband for me. It's such a perfect flex toolkit. And that's my favorite play style. So the Chillblain Hunt is the name of that deck. And as Davey said, if you'd like to learn more about that, there's a What the Decks episode out for it. My favorite card in the entire deck is Layfrost Conduit. That card is bananas. It's a Rhymelock Relic. So you have to go through the whole rhyme locking process before you see it. But once it's up, you're able to support any fighter from an objective being held by the person who has Layfrost. So that can be Althane. She's my archer, locking down a spot. I've given her the ability to toss two shots out with her fast shot upgrade, and meanwhile she's supporting everybody else, and if she goes down and I don't get to use her for Layfrost, that's okay, because it also like that would be good enough. I love that about that card, but it also will reduce defense dice by 1 on incoming attacks from the person with Layfrost Conduit. So that card is just so good.
Well, you mentioned that thaw mechanic there, Phil. I felt like that was maybe one of the, if not the main thing, certainly one of the main things that you objected to, having seen it in action. I presume mostly across the table. How have you felt thaw has played out in person? In practice, I should say.
So I have played with the deck twice now, because I sort of challenged myself to try it because I felt poorly about the deck. And it feels faster than I initially expected it to.
As in the thaw, it resolves faster.
It resolves faster than you'd expect, but also it's still like it's telegraphing a lot of information, and there's a relatively large amount of time for your opponent to do something about so the most common scenario that I think I've seen is that a person will play out their Rhymelocked Relic upgrade after their activation, which then means that your opponent is going to activate twice before you get to activate with it online.
Mm-hmm.
That often can mean that if your opponent has the means to attack that fighter, they will. Because it's like, hey, I know you're about to get something crazy. I'm going to try and stop that. And I find that to be a little frustrating, because the tools to make it thaw faster are not very good. The domain that makes you thaw faster is probably the best option. The gambit that just says like,
right.
Add one token. It's like, well, that's.
Whoopee!
I mean, I used a power slot for that in my gambits. I don't know. I think that probably could have been balanced a little bit differently.
So I ended up comparing the thawing process to kind of like the masks. Like if you plan to actually use the strength of the masks, like you have to spend an action like getting it going, right? So that if that's done in the space of a turn, that means you put it on before your turn, and then during your turn, you put it online, and then your next turn, it's up and running. And what I like about them in comparison is it kind of takes the same amount of time, but you don't have to spend that action getting them online. You get to do whatever you like with that action. And then not only will that get it online the next time you activate, but it will stay online longer than a round as well. So like I kind of feel it's like a really similar design space. I do agree that card that just gives you one one thought counter is bad.
It's just a potato of a power card in that deck.
Yeah, I do like the brittle reveal is available. I don't like that. I kind of have like a love-hate with it
Card's
because
bad.
Well, so
no, what's bad is the bleak outcome.
So
that card's also bad, but like
brittle reveal can allow you to control the timing, like on your own, a little bit better.
But it breaks your upgrade.
So you have to really plan on getting good value out of the upgrade. I would have preferred if it was something like it spots you the ability to get the upgrade going without a glory, and then if you can't pay for it when it comes up, that's the brittle reveal. Then it breaks. That way you could actually get one of these going a little faster.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. But like you said, I found it in practice, like they thaw so quickly. Like either you're waiting 2 of your opponent's turns and only 1 of yours, or you're waiting, or you're waiting 2 of your turns.
So I guess to the point about the masks deck comparison, I do think that the upgrade or the objectives that require you to have a mask in masks are better. Like the deck doesn't ask or doesn't really expect you to need to use the activations on the masks. It's more of like, hey, this is a nice bonus if you get to do it, which is easier, I think, in some cases. I've seen so many games now where somebody's just uses taking over and then they get to activate their mask in a power step and they're ready to go. And that feels really good. The other problem I have with some of the relics is that they have a positional requirement on top of thawing. And so then it's like, not only did I have to wait to get this effect, I might be out of position by the time it thaws. And I might just not get to use it at all.
Let me disagree with you and then agree with you. So for instance, I've been running, when we did the episode, we went on a gut feeling that I had with like Scavix Plague Pack, and we built a deck with them. Because a lot of what they want to do is in enemy territory and corrupting the territory. So hold objective in enemy territory while they're already on a suicide mission, and Rhymelock Relics can feel like a suicide mission. So I tried that with Scavix as well as Gits, and I've been having some success, but both times it's like it does suck because in both of those cases there's an attrition rate where the game resolves with did I score enough by the end of the game when you've got me tabled almost. And where you're talking about like the positional cost of you have to be in specific spots and the opponent can play around that. Yeah, I've gotten really sick and tired of that. I've played many missions now where I just feel like I'm running into the jaws of my opponent. And the deck scores well, and sometimes that's enough. But I'm encountering matchups where that just feels bad. The worst case scenario was me being Gits running into Exile Dead. He literally could just stand, and I was bringing the buffet line to him. Like,
yeah, it's pretty rough.
Sucked.
Yeah, I wonder if that's like back off what your objectives are telling you and work for board position situation.
That was all I could think of was like, okay, so you just have to abandon your game plan and dive on Diantelos or dive on, like, part of my thought is if I return to Gits, right now I'm experimenting with other stuff that we'll talk about later. But right now, if I am playing Gits, I almost need to identify what's going to be the worst things for me and eliminate those and then return to my hold objective plan, because I can't keep up the attrition rate until I knock out a few of those key aggro pieces.
Yeah. For me, I think the big thing that I enjoyed about this so far, because I actually have not seen Layfrost Conduit go off in the big way that it can, but it's what it brought with objectives. Some of the surges that move pretty smoothly if you get one of those upgrades out and you're holding objectives, and then just having essentially a supremacy, a big payoff for holding 3 back in the game, has made for some, when I'm playing against particularly good, I'm thinking of some games against maybe Diablerist here where and then Tyrell, just like some of these things between what the Gits are bringing or the Thorns are bringing, when they stack it with this, you're like, oh man, I really have to think hard about how much am I doing my game plan versus how much am I busting theirs, because I might pursue my game plan, get 3 glory, and then they pursue theirs and get 7 or something like that. And that's feels like that's been missing for a little bit, and it feels like it's brought a lot of thought back into some of the really thinking hard about where I'm putting some of the feature tokens to try and disrupt or set up different scoring things.
I love it.
Yeah. Icebound Defenders for me is the one card where I'm like, this card is great, and I wish that we had it in a different deck just so that it could be like a more pure hold.
Yeah,
because it's such a good design from a hold objective card. But yeah, if I know that somebody's running Rhyme Locked, which like I should because I have a plot card, I'm immediately thinking like, oh, well, they're going to have Icebound. So that means I need to try and deny them having just one in no one's territory.
Yeah.
Which is like, is a very fun head game in the setup phase to just be like, oh, I need to like be very careful and cognizant of where I'm putting these tokens.
Yeah.
I also like that there's a reward if they kill one of your Rhyme Locked fighters. Like to your point, it's worthwhile to take them down, but you might just be handing them steaming corpses.
Yeah, part of me is starting to consider that card more because I don't like the idea. Like, it's the one with the face down Rhyme Locked, right?
Yes,
correct.
Yeah, so like trying to time that so that I'm essentially putting out a baited target, and like, how well do you think that's going to be consistent over a 3 game? I'm still not. I still haven't taken Steaming Corpses.
I've been loving it. So you can use Winterbone Might to stall a Rhyme Locked relic longer, as well as.
I feel like if I'm playing against you, I see Steaming Corpses once. I'm never gonna like let that pop off.
Yeah, sometimes it can just be a simple like exchange of I'm going to give you 1 glory and I'm going to take 2, and I can just run like a 2 wound fighter through a lethal twice. That's how I've been. Like, if you're not going to give it to me and I want it and I'm willing to give you the 1 glory, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. In thinking about it a little bit more, it's actually pretty close to Corn Cares Not, which is. That card requires more fighters be out of action, but it's
fewer restrictions on the kind.
Yeah, you can just sort of set it up if you have to. You can just make sure it's going to happen, which...
Yeah.
I guess the one weird thing about it to me is that it's like it doesn't quite jive. It's almost like a suicide aggro card, whereas the deck is flex, which is like... a little bit weird, but
so I think ultimately, like, I think the deck is more interesting and has more play than I first gave it credit for, at least.
Yeah. I'm going to have to move us along.
We spent a lot of time here.
Yep. But we've mentioned Gits a couple times here, and Brian, I know you've been excited to get back in the mix with one of your old loves. So tell us what you think about having seen Gits in the wild now.
Yeah, I feel like I can be pretty concise because we've already been talking about them. The change to Scurry has been amazing. I think there's an errata to come about what I call dirty Scurry, which is a infinite loop of scurrying two or more Gits leapfrogging when they have Squinty Glarin on Zarbag.
Yeah.
So I think that should be errata to just be like, a fighter can only be scurried once per activation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do about it. It does feel unintended, and for people who aren't aware, it's because that upgrade allows you to use the scurry even if you have one charge or more than two move or whatever the case may be. And so, it does a thing where, like, it doesn't feel, it's never felt like completely busted to me, just where like, yeah, okay, you moved Dibs across the board. That was kind of cool. He's still on one dodge, and so maybe I can do something about that. But thematically, or you're like, why is this goblin moving infinite hexes? And it can create for like this really long, like, okay, show me how you're doing this, okay, and just not intuitive. So yeah, I'd agree.
It can create a really strange play window or play cycle where, the Gits players just kind of ludicrously moving around. I think it's something that is just kind of really untamed, and I think it should be dealt with. But at the same time, I really discredited the only one defense in the beginning. It hurt so much. I think it's good because I think it's a good change because sometimes when they just roll a crit defense and rolling 2 dice, sometimes it can just feel impenetrable. It's like how I feel with Mournflight. Sometimes it just completely tanks. I hate it.
I have found that I've actually played against them quite a bit, and at this point, and I still have in my head like, okay, it's late game. They're inspired. This is going to be hard to kind of dig them off these. I'm like, oh no, wait, this guy's just like 2 wounds, 1 dodge. This is okay,
Yeah. So I think it is a good change for balance wise, but it puts them, I think, solidly. Okay, so Scurry's been great. Squinty Glarin needs it fixed, just because it can get silly. But I don't think it's I don't think it's too powerful. I think it's just silly. I think they could use the power from Squinty Glarin because they have the only one dodge defense. But I think the only one dodge defense is good because otherwise they can just score so much, and sometimes they're just not going to die. So I think one dodge is good.
Yeah.
I think the change to Snurk was also good. Boy, he hits like a truck now. And boy,
I haven't seen him.
He's so consistently hitting like a freaking truck. And it's very rare that I actually get to use his wreck action now.
I haven't seen him not hit yet.
And unfortunately, Zach T in our local is the main recipient of old school Snurk because I made an attack and I was like, okay, I kind of really hope this hits. It didn't hit. I'm like, okay, now he's in old school mode. And then he made 2 attacks into Snurk trying to just be like, well, I can't have this 3 dodge get in my territory when you're playing Rhyme Locked. And I was like, yeah, that's fair, but it's Snurk. And Snurk did Snurk and rolled 2 defense, 2 defensive crits twice.
Eesh. Yeah.
So,
rough stuff.
4 crits on 6 dice and 2 attacks that both would have killed him because Verlaine was trying to murderize him.
It's been my running joke lately that 2 Fury 3 damage is the scariest attack profile in Underworlds.
Yeah, right. I mean, Snurk told Crackmarrow to hold his beer because he was getting ready.
Oh my god, the amount of scurries that I've done to make it full supports, and then it just it's gonna land then.
Or set a trap, all that.
That's when you watch Crackmarrow actually just starts drinking that beer.
Yeah, Crackmarrow's drinking Snurk's beer. So ultimately, I think Gits have landed solidly in B tier, high B tier. I think there's just certain matchups where they're just going to get rolled. And I don't know if maybe the play style is, I don't know, because when they start out, that's when they have the most tools to get their hold objectives. I don't know if they'll have enough time to eliminate their aggro bullies and then score their objectives in round 1, because oftentimes I feel like I'm down to dregs in round 2.
Yeah. When I've seen them played very effectively, it is leveraging the cool early positioning tricks with the squigs, either by getting that Drizzt and his 2 squigs moving to a particular spot, or starting them on a feature token. Works well with Fearsome Fortress, and then putting Drizzt in an annoying spot, like, oh god, like I need to get him off here, or I need to kill him, or whatever the case may be, but I really hate inspiring those squigs. So putting people in a lose-lose with that, leveraging really good scurry and getting some big scores. One little bit of counterplay I kind of started to learn was that with the gets everywhere, it's kind of the infestation, where they get 2 for holding everything in their territory, 1 for holding everything in no one's, and 2 for holding everything in enemy territory. But it all has to start with holding everything in their own territory. And so there's another one where, like, where I'm placing feature tokens or moving them, if I'm Sundara, can really kind of change what they can and can't get off this. And that's kind of I enjoy anytime there's counterplay, and I like doing that head game of, is he just setting up for it? Is he trying to get it? Like, that's all been good. So
yeah, I think they are in a really interesting place. For context, I've only built them with Seismic Shock and Rime-Locked Relics. I understand that Fearsome Fortress is a tempting option. I tried it once, had a horrible experience. I'm sure that's my fault, but I just don't really feel like getting invested in a deck that's about to rotate out. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be totally eating my words.
Got a little while on it.
6 months is a little bit of time.
I get married to a warband. Like, I am sad that my love affair with Thricefold Discord came to an abrupt end. But
didn't have to.
I'm back with Gits and Dread Pageant right now.
Yeah, be careful. Skylar's right here. Don't say so loud that Fearsome Fortress's days are
numbered.
It's okay. He's got Rime Locked. He'll be fine.
I know. He has a new one. It's a brand new toy.
I actually feel like it is my comfort deck for when it rotates out. But you better be sure I'm going to give Fearsome Fortress the next 6 months of send away.
Sure. If for you guys looking at the notes, I'm going to do a little of a skip here because I think I'm going to hop us to Thorns here as the other warband that if you're following the instructions of your objectives, you are similar to Gits, trying to hold different things. You are a swarmy warband. I've gotten to play a little bit with their Rivals deck and with Rime Locked. I have not been smart enough to do well with them, but I've been just good enough to see good play from my front porch, where I'm like, oh yeah, if I was better at this, I would have done something real cool there. I think these guys they feel like they've got a great skill cap on them. Like, you can do some amazing things if you really, really get the reps in.
Yeah. To that point, the only game I've had against them so far is against our local Cameron, and back in the day, Thorns were like the only warband he played. So he kind of brought that past experience to this new deck with better tools, and my God, he spanked me so bad.
Yeah, Cameron he doesn't lose those skill points when he specs into something.
Yeah.
So the game against them confirmed to me that I think there's a few things to be a little bit worried about with this warband. The push efficiency from Varklav is really scary. They can grab objectives really quickly in their own territory, and you've really got to have an answer to that. And then they have multiple teleport options in their deck, which on paper was like, okay, so you'll probably not draw all of these, but like, I should have known better, because like having just one when you're playing stalkers can really like catch people off guard and really catch them out of position. Now that they are just like, oh, I'll just set this stuff up. And one of them is a reaction, which is just like so rough, because it's like, oh, I'll charge in with the Briar Queen, who's pretty scary. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to bring in this Chain Rasp, who's going to jump on this objective adjacent to your fighter because I managed to open that up. So now not only am I holding this objective, I'm also getting to attack you more accurately. And it's just like, oh man, this is so rough. Like these Chain Rasps seem like they should be paper thin and really kind of weak, but it all kind of works.
2 dodge is nice, isn't it?
Yeah. And their glory ceiling's pretty high. So I fully expect this warband to be played competitively for quite a while, because they seem like they have all the right tools to be able to pull off some pretty crazy stuff.
That's really cool. I wish that I could hop around factions, because that sounds like what I want out of Gits. But I have no data for Thorns. Maybe I should dabble around with them, but like I said, I get married to a warband.
There's only so much time. My Rhyme-locked experience with them was pretty fun. I did not get to live the dream of getting Layfrost Conduit onto a fighter with a charge token on an objective, so that they are giving double supports to the entire rest of the warband. But it's gonna happen. I can feel it.
That's bananas. I love it.
Yeah, especially if they're getting the 2 dodge. Wow. I think my most recent one I had, embarrassingly, the Briar Queen went down to 2 attacks. One from an uninspired Bushwhacker, so 1 Fury attack, and then followed up with a kill shot from Hrothgorn. I was like, man, that the two smash into 2 dodge is whatever, but that 1 Fury into 2 dodge was really painful. So, but that being said, like it felt real fun. Skylar, you built with them, or did you?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Because I played against this.
Yes. So with the What the Decks project, there's been one thing I've learned that I did not entirely understand as I was signing myself up for this project. And that is, if I build a new deck every week on Tuesdays at noon Central Time, by the way, wink, wink. And I say that I'm going to commit to a field report at the top of the next episode as to how that deck went. That means I am giving myself weekly homework, and I'm the type of person who's going to want to be able to report on like 3 games minimum. So I'm signing myself up for like 3 games of each of these decks. And so I learned pretty quickly that I'm never going to get to play other games.
Congrats, right? Play yourself.
Yep. So the show is actually moved to every other week as we do like a fresh deck. And then that gives me 2 weeks to explore these. And then in the middle, we do something experimental there. And so this was one of those decks that was in the midst of like, I only had a week with it. Mm-hmm. And I loved my 3 games with it. So I built it with Passive Prophecy. And the like deck has like a 21 glory ceiling built into it.
Yikes.
Yeah. And complete harmonies in there, and isn't like the most ridiculous thing in the world because of all the pushes and teleports and stuff like that. You can even start just setting up for it in the like delve aspect. One of the games I played against, like my opponent was just feverishly running to objectives I had delved and like re-delving them, and I was like, hey, stop that.
No, get out of here, ghosts.
But where Brian is married to a warband, with this project, it's been having me explore warband, week to week there for a minute, and now every other week. And I'm loving that experiment, but I'm wishing I could spend more time with each of these decks. They're surprising me quite a bit. And this is probably the standout for me in the surprise category. I would echo that. I think there's a ton of skill expression in this deck. And there are some pretty mean cards as well. Like I'm just going to highlight a couple real quick. Like Awful Lear.
Oh man, so cool!
It's so cool.
Still have PTSD from that card.
It totally won me a game against Headsman's Curse, where I was able to like spend an activation moving closer to where I needed to get to and staring at the headsman himself and saying no.
This is the react and pick somebody they cannot charge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Choose a visible enemy fighter within 4 hexes of this fighter. That fighter cannot make it charge super actions in the next activation. Just
very nice.
And the other upgrade that I've been having a ton of fun with in that deck is Unliving Overseer. And I think Phil might have been hinting at this one because it's a reaction drive minion. After this fighter's activation, choose one friendly chain rasp within 2 hexes of this fighter. And this fighter has to be not a minion. You can't give this to a minion. Pick one. Push the chosen chain rasp 1 hex, or that chain rasp makes an attack action, then breaks this card. So if you can run in to somewhere where a chain rasp already has reach to, and you're charging into range 1, well, then Wave of Terror is going to activate, and not only are you getting an attack out of sequence with the chain rasp, but you're getting that full support into it. So I've seen this just topple, a full health 4 health, 4 wound fighter. I don't know why that was so hard to say. Out of nowhere, right? Like where they kind of felt that they were a little safe. And I was able to push in a minion, which then inspires the minion at the top of, that activation, charge in with, let's say, Varklov, and all of a sudden they're down 4 health real fast and in a hurry.
Yeah. I had a nice combo with Everhanged sitting on an objective with the bubble of you can't drive us back, and chain rasps are going to reroll. And I was like, oh man, I'm inspired. I'm on 2 dodge with reroll. There's lots of supports all over the place. Like it's going to be so hard for you to knock me off of there. And then he contracted a parasite. And I was like,
oh no,
man. All right. Well, that's the ghosts.
Can I just quickly say I didn't say it, but when I played against Cameron, he paired them with Daring Delvers, which I hadn't thought about. That's actually really gross because you get the what is it, the thorn, the quick roots, which is one of the best pings in the game. They have 2 wizards, so using flame wisps is pretty easy. And then you've got that domain that makes every fighter on an objective or a starting hex be on guard. And since you have all those 2 dodge fighters, it's just like, oh man, this is rough.
That's cool.
So pretty cool stuff.
I'll add that the hardest part about playing them is remembering that throttle on the Everhanged is after every activation step for you.
Oh yeah.
It's not just his, it's yours.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
All right.
Before we go to the big man, let's hit Spite Claw here. And I have played a couple games with this with Malevolent Masks. I was trying to find something that worked, and I was like, hey, a warband that is fast, that can get to different objectives, can inspire on command. There's kind of some cool things there, and it was pretty fun. I don't know that it was the best Masks pairing by any stretch of the imagination, but it felt very functional and quite fun. Really enjoyed the games with that. There was some weird things where Kirk, the Almost Trusted, when he's inspired, can react when Scritch dies to draw 3 power cards. If you bring Scritch back to life with Maskborn, then he dies again. You can react again. Kirk hates for you to Scritch to leave, but he loves to watch him go. Just pile up more power cards than you know what to do with. I mean, that's pretty niche, but it was pretty fun. Pretty fun little combo there. You guys got any thoughts on them?
Man, I wish I did. I've only gotten 1 Rivals game out with them, and it was against Zandaras, and I walked away. I I don't know, not feeling like they were for me, and that made me sad because I was super excited to play them and to try to embrace like the like suicide aggro aspects of their deck. And I plan to give them more time. Like one game is not enough to judge off of, and like it wasn't a lost game either. That was the game we kind of learned together that if you kill all 3 of Zandara's zombies, there's no way to bring them back.
Mm-hmm.
I just got lucky. I had taken one out, and so you're like, oh, I've got 2 left. That's fine. I got some time. Came up with a scything attack that landed way too well, and took them down. And we're like together, like, oh, wait a minute. There's no way to resurrect these guys now.
Yeah.
So I learned more about Zandara than I kind of did Spyclaw on that side. But I'll be pursuing them a little bit. I just didn't love that their rivals deck, which is what I was playing, like it is so like one note where it's like get them into enemy territory and try to die. Like, so it's just like you're just rushing across the line, attacking and hoping that like some particular targets on your side are going down.
Yeah. To that point, they are clan verminous, so it is like absolutely on theme that's the style, is they're just going to bury you in rats, because that's like the whole thing of like, oh, you know, lives are cheap, we've always had more rats.
Works in Age of Sigmar.
So I love that it's like really on theme, but I agree that it's a little bit disappointing in that that's a weird style to run for like a swarm warband, because you're going to bleed so much glory. I have not gotten to play with or against them yet. I've built a number of decks for them because I think they're curious. One of our like Discord members really seems to love them a lot, although I don't know how much outside of Rivals he's played them. But I'm glad to see that somebody really digs their style. I have been kind of looking at Hungering Parasite with them, just because they are fast and they can do the positioning game pretty well with the revives. The only sort of weird thing is like there's some stuff with Hungering Parasite that's basically saying like only have just the one fighter in enemy territory, and their deck says have everybody in enemy territory. So you kind of have to balance that a little bit, which is weird. But I think they could also play with Rhyme Locked okay, because they are fairly aggressive and they want to hold an enemy territory, but I obviously haven't tried it yet. So, but I think being able to resurrect fighters in enemy territory is a pretty strong thing to be able to do. So I'm sure there's something you can get up to with that.
Yeah, I think Speed 5, On Demand, Inspire, and Resurrect is gonna keep a lot of decks. You're going to keep looking at them to see, hey, is this something here that they can do? So,
yeah. Can I make this work?
Yeah. Well, next, let's talk about Mollog. I don't know that we've actually got that many reps, and some of that is because our resident troll boss, Jazz, we've been having some supply chain issues, and she was having trouble getting hers. So I've really only played the one against Mollog right now.
She gets it on this Thursday, by the way. So brace yourselves.
Okay.
Nice. And
data coming soon.
I think I might be the one game that you played against, Davey. So
yeah,
I have to say I didn't give you a very good showing with it either.
Well, what was interesting, so you lobbed Mollog into the middle of my Gits with the intention to scythe away.
Yep.
Didn't have great accuracy on your swings, but you did make me basically abandon my game plan and be like, I cannot score fast enough or risk this troll being here. I'm just going to throw everything back at it. So shot a ton of arrows, stabbed with Zarbag, and managed to take Mollog off, I think, at the start of round 2.
Yep.
To kind of lock that up and feel pretty comfortable with it. But yeah, TBD. It certainly always looks scary, and I just the question is if you can keep the troll alive, and we don't have enough reps to say.
Yeah, I do feel like just playing him that one time, that his loss of his ability to allow for a charge post move or even pre-errata double charging, like it's rough now because you really only get the one shot with him unless you want to like walk him forward just as a move and then be like, okay, I guess I'm daring you to do something about this troll, which obviously in this game you did. I probably should have just kept at range 2, but I was thinking with Hungering Parasite that I want to be adjacent to stagger your gits, but it didn't really work out. I still think Hungering Parasite could be an interesting matchup with him, but going down to 6 wounds and losing some action efficiency, never being able to be charged out unless the Stalag Squig dies. There's a lot of weird stuff that you have to manage now with the Warband that I didn't quite appreciate when I read the cards. So, yeah, TBD, but as of right now, I'm actually way less scared of Mollog than I used to be.
Fair. Brian, Skylar, any quick thoughts there?
No data.
I've heard really good things about Voidcurse Thrall as a pairing with them. So that's about all I can add to the conversation at this point in time. No data for me personally.
Yeah, basically like speculation on what would be the good pairings. It seems like faction wise he's relatively balanced, but what can really synergize with that to make the Mollog a big beast?
Sure.
Void Curse seems to be the favorite that I'm hearing.
How cool is it though right now that we're not like breaking like under the pressure of Mollog has returned. Instead we're like, we've kind of got minimum data and we think he's probably pretty balanced.
And I haven't heard the internet like massively.
Yeah, nobody's freaking out.
Well, that covers Rivals of the Mirrored City. We have everything that came in the Wintermaw box, and I'm going to start with the one I think we have the least information about and build up from there. So, Brethren of the Bolts. I myself have only played them Rivals. I played with my son. Really enjoyed it. Lots of little cool tricks. It felt like you were doing a lot of things that you didn't get to do with other warbands, which is always fun to me. And there were some cool, like, hey, I'm holding some stuff here. Some sort of flexy things, like I'm holding objectives and I killed a guy or something like that. So it felt good, but that was just into Rival Skinnerkin. Anybody got more than that?
I actually also have Rivals into Skinnerkin. I've only played one of that as well. But I'll say that I felt when Phil and I were talking about that on our episode Breaking the Box, we kind of talked about how we thought that was going to be a hard matchup for the Skinnerkin, like playing Rivals. And at least in that one game, which, isn't a data set, but in that one game, we really felt it, me and my opponent. So I think the Skinnerkin really need to pair into something to be able to take on Brethren of the Bolt as is.
Yeah. I actually take it back. I do have a rep against him, Lathanum. I got to play him, and he... I'm going to blank on what he was pairing with. I want to say it was Rime-Locked Relics, actually, for more of that sort of flex. And again, there were some crazy things like Pater Phileas bombing me with like a 5-range shot. I was like, ugh, like you were way at the back of the board. I did not expect you to smoke this zombie. But again, it did feel like damage became an issue because they were having trouble putting out enough that I was able to overcome it some with Zandara's crazy healing and kind of stay ahead of things. Close game, but that exactly that where I was like, you're kind of doing some cool, weird stuff over there. You're pretty accurate, but maybe just not enough damage that I have to panic.
Yeah, I feel like if you can get to them, then you're going to be able to take them apart pretty easily. So they really have to play a siege game. And I think that their deck pulls them, like if you just were to take their rivals' objectives, like those pull you away from that siege position. Like some of them want to see you in no one's and enemy territory. And I think no one's is probably about as far as you want to go away from your leader, who's probably going to be hanging out in the back.
Yep.
I've been building like I'm excited to tinker with these guys quite a bit. So I have decks built up for Void Curse Thralls and Fearsome Fortress. I think the Fearsome Fortress deck might actually be more cute than good. But we'll see. There's a lot of synergies there, but at the same time, like Void Curse Thralls is going to like so many warbands are going to miss that deck because like if you don't have to worry about the negative of like losing special attack actions or sorry, special actions in general or range 3, the rest is generally really beneficial, right? Like with them, it's cranking them up to 1 block all the time, giving them access to movement tricks. And like it's gonna be weird when that one rotates out, but I think that one's probably really good for them. Give them a little bit more survivability constantly. Give them tools to line up where they need to be. I
guess for me there was some where it was like, all right, I'm gonna play this card which will inspire me and I'll get to do this thing, and then next turn I'll uninspire, and the whole time I'm like, all right, like whenever you're done doing weird stuff back there on your side of the board, like let me know, we'll keep playing the game. But sometimes it would translate to some pretty cool stuff. So another one that we haven't been able to focus on as much. One that we have though, Skinnerkin. And Phil, this is really you.
I think I've played 5 games with them now, and I've gotten to try 2 different pairings. And man, a lot of the stuff that I thought was going to be a weakness on paper really hasn't manifested at all. I thought like, oh, they've got like multiple fighters that start on 1 damage, and they, how are they going to kill anybody? But my experience has taught me that they don't care about getting kills at all, so it doesn't matter. You just have to land attacks. And so you just swarm people and just lay into them, and you don't really care if they die because you just want those haunch counters. And there's really, from what I have experienced, there's like 3 breakpoints with haunch. You got 3, which is your inspire, which is trivial. All the games that I've played, it's never been difficult to hit 3. You've got so many different ways to get haunch counters that it's pretty much guaranteed. And then 5, which is that's like really where you want to be for your end phases, because Plated Banquet is a 3 glory end phase. You need to have at least 5 and then have upgrades on all your fighters, which usually by the end of the game is like 2. So it's really a pretty straightforward 3 glory end phase. And then if you can hit 7 or more, it means that you can get extra glory, or you can burn them for heals. And so if you know that like you're in a position where you feel confident you can get more than 5, you can start burning them early because you'll get there by the end of the game. And it's pretty scary, like what you can do. As an aggro deck, the way I have it built right now with Void Cursed, the in-deck glory ceiling is 17, but if you take into account the extra glory that you can get from Unfit for a King and Calloused Hands, which is their upgrade that breaks for an additional glory, you can push that all the way up to 20 in theory. And so then any kills are just adding to that pile. And I think Brian felt that full force when I played against his Gits. So...
Yeah, he scored what? You scored 19, not including my bounty.
Yeah, and then I had 7 kills, so I got 26, which is the most I've scored in a really long time.
That's hold objective levels.
It does feel like, and this may be a incorrect instinct, but Gits fill up so much of the board and so many bodies that they don't counterpunch hard enough to like start taking your stuff off real quick.
Yeah, they're like
that feels like a
bad
dream matchup where you are actually getting kills on them because you got 2 wounds. You're getting those early attacks. You're starting to farm haunches.
Yeah,
I think the very opposite end. I'd be real worried about what these guys would do into like Masks, Mournflight, which
yeah. I think Masked Mournflight could be slightly bad because you might not land attacks, but they have a lot of
Or what
accuracy
about
boosts.
Yeah, that's true.
or Domatan Storm Coven, maybe like an elite.
So the main thing I've been thinking about is like what will be the most problematic matchup is something actually like Sirenize, where they just don't engage with you.
Ooh.
And they just force you to just walk towards them and take damage, and then once you get there you're already hurt. Yeah. And if you had to give up like all of round one just getting to your opponent, that means you don't have any haunch counters, you probably didn't score anything. I think that could actually be where they really fall down, because they are relatively fast at 4 move for most of the warband, but like that's not enough to cross longboards usually. So that's the kind of thing that is like, ooh, maybe this could be a real problem for them. You might not be able to score enough, and then if you can't score and you can't get inspired, then like what are you going to do? You're speed 4 to start with for most of the warband, which is good, but it's not like crazy. So that's really the thing that worries me the most is what do you do against those matchups where, so I think it's like Ephelem and Sirenize mostly, where they're probably just going to be content to sit away from you. But I haven't played either of those matchups yet. I played Drom with Rhymeworm's Bite, which I thought was going to be much worse for me than it ended up being. And to be fair, this was against a relatively new player, and they were pretty forward in their positioning, but I mean, Drom does have to kind of engage. So,
I mean, my take on that is that in that matchup, that Drom player has to throw himself away at the back because he can starve you, score some easy end phases, and get a head start on the glory while you're getting starved, and get some damage in.
I would think that's probably true as well. That was also the one game I have with them with Breakneck Slaughter instead of Void Cursed, which it worked, but it was like, I think Void Curse gives them a lot better tools. The extra like push and movement and extra defense from Void Curse is really nice. And then I think you want to have supports. And so parking a Void Curse ghoul next to somebody and being like, you're not going to push me away, can really actually be a big deal. And being able to use the refashioned upgrades to then like make a charge and pull somebody in for support, where, so like the one that I've been surprised at every single time is how impactful it is the guy with the chains, Cedric. He has this thing where if he's supporting an attack and he has a charge token, he gives +1 dice to whoever he's supporting. And I was like, that's probably not going to come up that much, is it? And then with Void Cursed, you can manufacture it almost every round, at least once.
Right.
That's a pretty big boost. So
sure. It's a good call.
Yeah.
Before we depart from Skinnerkin, I just wanted to shout out that our local Oliver was searching for a warband, and when the Skinnerkin dropped, it finally arrived. He's all in on Chef Eater Courts, and he even actually asked me to take a look at this deck for him that was Rhyme Locked Relics paired with them. Whoa. And I didn't get a chance to view it for a couple days, and I messaged him. I had a What the Decks episode coming up, and it was going to be in that experimental slot B. And I was like, hey, what would you think about me like opening this up live on the show and just kind of like reviewing it there, trying to get a sense of what the goals of the deck are, what the strengths of the deck are, what I think maybe its weaknesses are, where it's going to struggle, what type of swaps I'd recommend, things like that. Ended up calling the segment Deck Doctor. And so that's out there. We had a lot of fun building it, it was a really interesting way to like interact with the show, where I got to receive a deck and go over it, make adjustments, and then kind of like pass that back, and to hear the excitement when it got passed back, and to hear that the first game was a success too was really fun. As well as just kind of like, even if the first game hadn't been a success, to hear be able to run through over a dedicated format like that, all the considerations, was just really fun. So I guess that's been my experience with Skinnerkin recently. It's actually the fourth of the 10 of these that I've been able to do on that show, and I haven't been able to do any more of these 10 decks. But that's kind of an interesting relationship that I have with Skinnerkin so far.
Well, that's cool. It's we talked about Gits maybe being this really good pairing. It'll be like it's just what the meta looks like. Maybe they're great. Maybe because they'll see enough hordes that this will really work out for them. It'll be interesting to see. That leaves us with 2 Universal Rivals decks, and I'm going to go with Rhymeworm's Bite first. I think we had concerns about the pings in there. I think as a pure Rivals, which is the first way I tried it, some of the scoring felt kind of wonky. We hypothesized, so some of the things that it might pair well with, Drom likes, or Drom has some in-faction domains that can help some of the domain side of things, because that is, believe it or not, there's more than just pings in this deck. It has some domain tech in it, which is actually pretty decent, just kind of overshadowed by the rest. But what has also been really kind of amazing is pairing with Razors, and I know Brian's got some strong feelings on that.
This is a degenerate deck. It's trashy, no class, absolutely abhorrent. I don't know if it should be allowed in the game. I despise it with every fiber of my being. So that's our baseline.
That's Brian playing against it once. So
yeah,
I've played against.
Wait till he plays.
That's true. I've played against Domination.
Okay. And you beat me. So
yes, but I just don't think this is a good play style. Like, to just be able to sit and cause damage to your opponent with little engagement, with no dice rolling, just basically you take a damage, and falling ice shards or puncturing ice shards. The card combo of potentially playing it, manufacturing 2 damage to yourself or to your opponent, and then discard it, then play a card, draw it back, 2 more, do it again. Rinse and repeat. 2 card 4 damage, free ping, I think is absolutely disgraceful. I hope that gets fixed in some form or fashion. And I don't know why we keep having this conversation about more ping coming into the game, and like, why does this keep happening? I thought we were past this.
So what makes me particularly sad about the case that you just brought up is that if you're playing for like a hold game plan or like Fearsome Fortress and Flex, what have you, like those decks are asking you to be in these positions to take these damages. So you have to forego your game plan and mind your footing, like and then try to bridge the gap and take them down. So like it's just. And then it becomes like a ballerina act until you see these cards. Meanwhile, you have to forgo your scoring that you yourself would be normally pursuing.
Yeah, I think for me, the most egregious is what Brian already mentioned, the puncturing ice shards.
Yeah, try
it. It was...
Well, so the most egregious was Sirenized Razors with this, because it's like, yeah, you're doing this ballerina dance to avoid the ping damage with lethals, and where mind your footing, you're running through a landmine minefield, and Sirenize a sniper at the other end, just firing shots downrange.
Yeah, I think the puncturing ice shards, which has the unfortunate situation where you can end up having to hit the same warband twice. Like it looks like it's designed to hit one warband and then probably hit the other, because your opponent actually has more options to pick. But it's been surprisingly it has not been as hard as I thought to like make it so your opponent has to pick the same fighter twice. And the fact that they can pick this back up with reemergence and then play it again feels pretty rough.
That was my first experience against this deck too.
Yeah. And outside of that, in my opinion, I've had several very close games. One very not. It was a very negative play experience for my opponent, who I think it was a bad match, and then also kind of it was a crushes that deployed way back, and so I was just able to do a horrific amount of damage before they even got to swing. I think a more aggressive deployment, game 2 of that would be much closer. I think if there was, I think it's puncturing ice shards feels like the most egregious thing. All the stuff with like triggering off of, hey, a domain is discarded, so do this thing, like that feels interesting and fun, and I just don't get to look very closely at it. And a lot of the objectives feel a little like I'm just ripping the board apart. I'm getting great board state progress on the objectives. I'm struggling a little bit, is what I've found.
Agreed.
That's I wonder if bringing puncturing ice shards into check would do the trick. Hard to say.
I was just that was a hypothesis that Phil and I had when we were going over this. Is that the deck almost seems like it's expecting you to like get glory for killing through these pings, right? And so the objective deck kind of felt like it had less to offer. So it seemed like a conscious choice where like the objective deck isn't so great because a lot of the time you're going to be burning fighters down pretty quick.
Yeah. I wonder with, not to belabor the ifs and maybes, but a similar card to puncturing ice shards is the, was it not engulfing swallow? The one where you're going to take somebody with you.
Oh yeah, the push one.
Brief emergence. The brief emergence, and there, when your opponent picks, they have the option to pick.
Yep.
So that opponent can choose another fighter. I wonder if you just put that caveat on puncturing ice shard, say your opponent can choose another fighter, and that way, if you have somehow tried to engineer this thing, at least they aren't forced to punish themselves, which feels like the most negative play experience part of this thing. So
right, I'm going to punch you now. You punch yourself.
Yeah, that feels real rough.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty reasonable change to this card.
Yeah,
because it still can recur as well. So that's already scary enough. The fact that it can come back and deal the second damage on its own. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to take off the domain part of it, because the domain is the interesting piece, like a domain that doesn't persist and then breaks something else and lets you do some fiddling around.
It's strange because I've seen it where they put a domain in play, but they're like, actually the search requires me, and so they play the instant domain to cleanse the other domain, and it didn't seem efficient, but it was scoring points.
I would have loved if the instant domain effect was on anything else, though.
Sure, right.
Kind of like how when we with the cloak, Frostworm cloak, right? It's like I reduce damage if I have an ice counter. It's like, oh, that's sweet. How do I get an ice counter on it? I also give out ice counters.
I do that. Don't worry about it.
Motion machine, great.
Yeah. So I think what we've seen is that there are a couple warbands that can go crazy with this, and because of the wonkiness of the objectives, there are others that don't. I was trying to build and Skulls, please don't hate me. But I was seeing if I could build a Rippa's deck with this, specifically like hey, I can't take 1 damage and then combine that with like reducing stuff. There's like a surge that scores okay. Like there are a few things that I was like, this is good. You really want to be able to find a weapon in there to help out the other two guys. So I put it together. It was one of those, like, it was great until about 80% of the way through the build, and then in the last 20%, I was like,
So I want to ask, because like I despise this deck, but I recognize I am extremely prejudicial against this deck. Like Tome's Mollog passive sucked. Like it doesn't feel good to have to force to charge into a enemy territory and then swing on the troll, but the troll's going to bonk you. Like, that doesn't feel great. But at least it's like he's passive scoring. But with Siren Eyes, it's like, okay, Widowmaker from Overwatch came in and she's just sniping you across the board and you got to charge across to get to her. That doesn't feel great either. And like Rhymeworms, just from a deck narrative standpoint, it really feels like what you're especially the Razors player is going to be doing is just like looking through their domain cards. This doesn't work right now. It's not great, but I'm just going to spend it and then like get a glory and like, oh yeah, by the way, ping. And then, it's kind of, okay, by the way, ping. They're just playing their own game, sorting through cards because Rhymeworms feels clunky. It feels unelegant. And then they're just pinging away. And then you get close enough and like, oh yeah, ping yourself too, by the way. Is this okay? Like, I know that, Phil, you've asked for more play styles in the past and not judging you at all, but like, do we consider this a play style? Should this be a play style?
Well, I think it's okay, but I've enjoyed those in the past. Like Phil and I have had some games that we really enjoyed that I think we each took like half our activations drawing power cards, trying to set up like this perfect thing and that were fairly passive. And so I definitely recognize that, I don't know. I guess I often like that there is a puzzle to solve. Like, okay, how am I going to get around this? And I think that there is, with watching where you expect Siren Eye to be set up and creating those lanes, I'm not convinced yet that there's not enough counterplay to it to make it oppressive, and I like that. But I think if there is, that the level of that counterplay might be so like it might take a whole lot of effort to figure that out.
Because I'm really putting this deck on blast because like I had flushed boards running Dread Pageant into Siren Eyes. I reached them all round one. Like I was making swings, and yeah, the dice didn't go my way on those swings, but it was like that was optimal. Suboptimal is going to be the long board, and that's going to feel even worse. Like as bad as I felt after my match, like, and my opponent played well, played very good, and made a lot of exactly what I feared. Like every time I was sitting there, be like, okay, if I were him, I would do this, and I hate that, and he would do it every time. Like, well played. But I'm like, this feels to me like the to the end play style. If you remember that phase when it was just draw through your whole deck and score a bunch of points, and your opponent had no counterplay to you just taking draws.
Yeah,
your whole deck. That's
when
that's
that
what
existed.
this feels like.
The ceiling on that was low enough that that you could outscore it if you had some stuff. Here the question is like, does this disrupt? Like this again with puncturing ice shards, particularly has the potential to victimize hold objective warbands, which would maybe be a natural, like, get a high glory ceiling if you're not coming in and one-shotting people, if you're just trying to chip them. I would say Dread Pageant, I know you've got some healing, but I think you really hate Glissette being able to be pinged off so easily. Like, it really sacrifices one of your great things. So that feels like a pretty challenging...
It does, but I knew that, despite Rhymeworms Bite, despite Rhymeworms Bite and Siren Eyes Razors, it was already a ping heavy meta, and that's why I wasn't playing with them for a while. So I knew Glissette was going to die. Part of the deck is just tooling up Vasilak and Slake Slash, and so
I guess what I'm getting at is like we have some big concerns. I want to see more if counterplay is possible. If you trim, particularly if you find a way to trim off like the worst excesses of the negative play experience, is it counterplayable?
No, my one game is certainly not enough evidence to condemn it, but boy, I disliked it before, and I didn't realize the pairing with Siren Eyes would be so bad. And I had been warned. I was like, oh yeah, that's going to be nasty. Ha.
Yeah, it's funny because I think I saw that, and then I chatted with George over from Path to Glory, and he's like, I think it's really good, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna surprise people. I'm gonna bring this out to League and just try and see how good it can be. And Paven showed up with exactly like we almost did a true mirror Sirenai versus Sirenai on both on Rhymeworm's Bite. I was like, okay, well, all right,
yeah,
good job.
Empirical evidence. The longboard matchup is just going to be so nasty.
Potentially, yeah.
I think it's going to take a tournament.
A weird one that I've been thinking about, I need to see it, is that so it's lots of ping, which is really gross, but the one warband that can deal with ping relatively well is Headcrackers, because they already have an upgrade that says if you would take exactly 1 damage, you don't.
Skylar, you have homework.
If they pair with Rhymeworms, they now have 2 upgrades that do that. And they already have some really good scoring.
That's not where I was going with this. I thought you were saying that Headcrackers could do well against Rhymeworms and Sirenai. I was like, Skylar, charge against Sirenai and tell me I'm wrong. But Phil, shut your mouth.
Brian, weren't you the guy who embraced the gnarlism a couple years ago?
Sure did. And so if you really wanted to, you could have these orcs that are just like, I don't care about your hammer tide. I don't care about your pings. We're coming to fight. And I'll have to say, from the games I played against Sirenais, if you can get to them, their defense stats don't hold up all that well.
I hate that the tech for against Rhymeworms is in Rhymeworms. I hate that so much.
But anyways, that's where my head's
done on Rhymeworms.
Okay, Skylar.
Talk about some. Skylar had some thoughts.
Give Skylar one chance to weigh in before we move to our last one and try to wrap up here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think like a burn down play style can exist in the game, but the most important part of that is what Davey was touching on. Like there has to be like clear and present counterplay. So like it can be a challenging matchup, but it has to be like overcomeable, like it has to like be a satisfying challenge to overcome. And I think this deck was particularly timed poorly when it comes to where the community was kind of widely feeling when it comes to ping, for this one to come out and just add to that equation. But yeah, I was thinking about Brian's question about should the play style exist, and for me, the thing I've always disliked about like the saturation of ping that we experienced was how hard many of the options that existed were to counterplay against or the lack of counterplay. Like bringing that freeze thaw finish into the same realm as IR as Frozen Bonds, as we mentioned earlier, with the latest errata, that feels good. That's the type of ping that I want to see in the game, that if you're up against it, then you can have studied it and think to yourself like, all right, here's how I'm going to overcome the matchup.
Sure.
On the flip side of that is if you have to study it to overcome it, then it's going to inherently be a bad time for a lot of casual games up against it, which I don't particularly love there. But yeah, I think we can totally move on from Rhymeworm's Bite. What else you got for us, Davey?
We got just one more, and that's the Hungering Parasite. This one,
I do love this one.
So I have some thoughts. I can say that I've done many builds with it. Like I kept on being like, oh, it seems like it might work with this. Yeah, it looks like it does. So like Gnarl Spirit Pack, and I think actually Headsmen really like it. I did some stuff with Zundara, but the one I've seen the most is I helped Emmett. We kind of put together a Skittershanks Claw Pack build, which seems pretty darn good, and especially like they finally have a pairing that really seems to work for them. Like it's a real solid instead of like it's okay. I've got some more thoughts, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys here.
Yeah. Well, I got to face said claw pack firsthand, and
Oh yeah,
it's
Right.
it's pretty gnarly.
It hurts.
The 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 main reason I feel like it works so well is not necessarily because of the parasite being particularly egregious, but it's that the combo of being like, I can bomb in this fighter with the parasite, and then I have multiple tools for protecting that fighter in a pretty uncounterable way.
Yeah.
Being able to be like, oh, you can't target my assassins. Well, just so happens my hungering parasite fighter is an assassin. You're going to hit me, but I'm going to take, just the one damage or whatever.
right.
It makes your action efficiency really tough. And I think that's pretty fun. It didn't feel like broken, but it was really rough. I believe our game I was playing my first time Void Cursed, the
Skinnerkin.
yeah, Skinnerkin. I was like, chefs, I don't know. And you beat me 20-16, but you had some pretty bad luck in that game. So it was like, oh, it felt, close, but really high scoring. I don't think it should have been that close, but like dice are dice. That's, I don't know. Shouldn't apologize for them. But overall, though, I really like the way the deck works. I have felt, though, like as we've played with it and against it more, there's not that much counterplay for the deck. It's kind of like, oh, either you have to be able to kill the fighter who's infected, or they're just going to score a bunch of glory. Because a lot of the objectives in the deck are like positional only. It's like, oh, my hungering parasite infected fighter is in enemy territory and the only one, well, I get 2 glory. I'm on an objective, well, I get 2 glory. And it's like, without distractions existing really in the game outside of old warbands that just had them innately, I don't know how you are supposed to deal with that.
Yeah, I will say the lack of delay, like, because you can just put another friendly fighter in enemy territory. So when the one that has it dies, and then it just instantly goes right back on the next one. Like the lack of delay from putting the parasite onto a new fighter is kind of the most challenging part of it, I think.
So some of the tips that I've seen just since I've played against it quite a bit is one denial is they've got something for holding an objective in enemy territory. You can see that coming often, and so try and nudge them off. A big one is to make sure that that host, I tend to call it whoever's got the parasite, make sure that host is standing on their own, so that they have to damage themselves. Presumably they don't have that upgrade. And even better, if you can set up so that they kill themselves with that at the end of the round. So leave them vulnerable for the end of the round and on their own. And I know that's potentially a big ask sometimes, but if you can set that up, then they kill themselves and they do it at the very end of the action phase. There's actually not another inspire before you hit the end phase, and it actually bricks out a whole lot of stuff. And maybe if they're taking the 2 glory for their leader having it or your leader having it, sort of thing, then trying to keep your leader away. There are some pieces of counterplay that I feel like I'm learning as I play against it, and whether those are enough is kind of the question, because it does feel like, hey, there's a lot of stuff like I think there's Cursed Tyrant or something like that, where you've got 3 upgrades plus Bane of Heroes. That is the kind of objective that we've seen in Rippas or Myaris that we really find to be pretty solid. So TBD. I think what's interesting about this one, unlike Rhymeworm's Bite, which is kind of wonky and there's plenty that doesn't work all that great with it, I feel like there's a lot of decks that actually work pretty well with Hungering Parasite. I've seen more pairings with this than just about any other universal. Skylar, you had an interesting one.
Yeah. So I've only gotten to try one game with this pairing, but I got so excited when I was looking at this deck. I immediately thought, like, what if, because the Soul Raid is never far from my mind, what if I built a deck that was entirely based around keeping the fish next to new host candidates and just constantly passing the parasite back over to the enemy team. In the first game I played with it, it was like I was a three-legged drunk donkey trying to negotiate its way down an icy staircase.
Okay. So,
buttery smooth.
And I learned some lessons there. Like, I got excited about the idea of like, oh, if I bring all the stuff that can like help me break the parasite and control when that's going to be, I can take advantage of both cards that are going to be really cool when I have the parasite, and then still get it off of me and hand deliver it with Spinefin over to the enemy team. Well, that was a test game against Kagur's Ravagers, and one of the biggest lessons I learned is if you hand the parasite over to the enemy team and you need it back, make sure that that's a sure thing.
Yeah, right.
Because Alex just ran away. And I was like,
no,
which is the most unpredictable thing that Alex could do. Like, to be fair,
right? I was like, wait a minute. No, like now none of my upgrades and gambits work.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point. Yeah, because he's got, and some of your objectives are just like, hey, did the person with Bane of Heroes die, or did the Bane of Heroes go on to somebody who's inspired? Did they make a successful attack action? And if they just say, no, this guy's not playing, like he's going to sit there, drink some chamomile tea, take some ibuprofen, try and kick this infection, then yeah, that's another denial. That's interesting. I like that.
And the reason for this, by the way, won't be surprising. What was this Ravager up to? It was not running away with the parasite. It was, I need to go score absolute desecration.
Of course.
Now that is the most predictable thing.
I should have seen it coming.
Yeah.
But more testing for sure. Like, I actually am not abandoning that thesis statement. Like, I think it would be really fun to build a Soulwave deck that focuses mostly on handing it off. But it's going to be a balancing act that's going to take a bit of testing and quite a bit of tweaking, because as somebody who loves Soul Raid, one of their weaknesses is their end phase objectives or their objective suite in general. They have like, 2 banger surges, a couple okay surges. So in the surge department, they're doing pretty healthy pairing into most rivals decks out there. But their end phases are pretty abysmal. So I was kind of grabbing most of what Hungry Parasite had to offer, and I gotta figure out a different balancing act there, because that was not the answer. At least not in that initial test game. Super fun deck though. The Hungry Parasite in general. I like that you're balancing like the uninspire and being staggered, potentially being damaged against, this easy surge pool that it kind of comes with. I think.
I really like how on first read you saw it as a hot potato deck where you're trying to get rid of it. And then I read it as a, this is a Spider-Man symbiote. This is Venom.
Yeah, I would say that maybe the card, well, we're going to set aside for now, unfortunately did not receive an errata, the what am I thinking of? The upgrade for
frenetic effort.
Yeah, frenetic effort, which is basically allowing you to barge over and over and get free attacks with your that I can't imagine that's long for this world. But
that might be partially responsible for that popularity you've been seeing with this deck, because that's some shenanigans.
That is some shenanigans. Outside of
forcing
that,
people to do stun while stun is also useless is just hilarious.
That card aside, I think the most feels bad in this is the Malefic Siphon, which is the heal yourself 1 and damage somebody 1 within 3. You're like, just a little more ping in here.
I hate it so
into
much.
This meta. I know. That one feels like the most unfortunate piece of it. It's great. You love to draw it.
I mean, it feels at least if we weren't in a world full of ping already, I think it would be perfectly appropriate in a parasite deck.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. I'm going to pass it around the horn here for one more time for anybody to cover any of these 10 things that we have hit. Any last thoughts you want to review before we move on?
It has felt like a really refreshing time to be in the game because the meta is completely wide open.
Yeah.
Rhyme Warm Spite notwithstanding.
Yeah.
I hate that deck.
Go ahead.
Looking at our local, as they've gotten their hands on this, we've had 2 weeks of league now, and we've seen 28 unique warbands in 2 weeks of league.
Wow.
So
yeah, pretty great.
Like everyone is experimenting right now, and it's so cool.
Yeah. It's fun every time you sit down. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna see, and not just I don't know what I'm gonna see, but I don't know what like play style I'm gonna see. And it's such that like some of the old big bads like Ephelum and Domatan, I'm like, I don't actually know where they rack up anymore because I don't see them because people are so excited to be playing this other stuff. So hard to say.
Playing them.
Yeah,
they're flying under the radar right now.
Yeah.
They're laying low. They're like, we've got too much attention, but it's so exciting.
Well, we are going to wrap things up here. You can talk to us. The best place is the Discord. There's a link right here in the show notes. I want to say a special thanks to the patrons who help make our programming possible. You can be a patron too. We really appreciate that. There is more content at themortalrealms.com. Skylar, there is an event coming up. It's a Madtown Throwdown Q2. When is that going to be?
Saturday, June 8th. And we have a event page up and live on themortalrealms.com for you to check out.
Perfect. Link also in these show notes. Coming up soon, we are going to play it a little bit by ear. You guys will have gone to Alberta. We probably won't have time to cover that. And that's a little bit, we try not to spend too much time covering events that not everybody can make it to, but more observations. We hear you loud and clear.
We will have to cover the pink slip match.
Oh my gosh. I had actually completely forgotten for a moment that I live in terror of that moment.
Excellent.
Embrace it.
I can't wait to put my warband on the table and see
Sexum and Skylar are playing another pink slip match.
Oh boy.
This is my hell.
There will be a Fight Club style game in a hotel room. It's going to be dope.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing about it. I wish I could see it in person.
The one thing to bring up on the pink slip match real quick is there's been an adjustment to the rules.
Okay.
Yes.
So going forward, because we wanted to keep this energy going, we wanted to do this, keep the momentum here, make it a thing. And so instead of simply saying, that warband is yours forever, you've just lost it to the pink slip match. It's now kind of a battle of the podcasts, and what is happening is when we win a warband, it gets added to like the claim stack, and if and when the other podcast wins, they win back the entire claim stack that the other team has been holding hostage.
Yes, so I will bring the condemners in a pink briefcase. And we'll see if we add a warband to the horde or if we return a warband, and then we have to fight back for what Skylar's bringing.
Done.
We are going to wrap it up here. You guys, let's do it real quick. Flavatext quiz. Are you ready?
Hit me.
All right.
Better not be from Worms.
Maybe. We'll see.
It's puncturing ice shards. I'm calling it now.
This one is attributed to Garrick Gorbeard. Oh. There you are. I've been waiting.
It's the reemergence card, I think.
That's exactly what it's called, reemergence.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Well done, Phil.
I decided to do Rhymeworm's Bite to tweak Brian and Garrett quote to appease Phil.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Good.
You're a worm biting my ass, Davey.
Where's the squeaky battle mallet?
Your recommended listening for this episode is, with regards to the meta, it is titled "Who Knows," and it's by Marion Black. For What the Hex, I've been Davey.
I've been Phil.
I've been Brian.
And I've been Skylar.
Yeah, but now the blooper reel will be great.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The important stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian.
Got you covered, Davey.
All right.